Good evening, everyone. I am Council President Mally Rosado, and I'm calling to order this May 26th regular council meeting to order. I'd like to take a moment of silence for Mr. Ansari, who passed away. He was a former NAACP president. He was also the former acting director of the Open Hearth. He served with me. I had the pleasure of serving with him on the Civilian Police Review Board. I'd also like to take a minute of silence for Iran Otero. He was the assistant director for Delaron Funeral Home. So if we could take a moment of silence. Thank you. I would now like for our town clerk to lead us on the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's stand if you can. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam President. Councilwoman Bermudez.
Present.
Councilman Clark.
Present.
Councilman Gale.
Here.
Councilman LeBron.
Present.
Councilman Mictum.
Here.
Councilwoman Rosado.
Present.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
Here.
Councilman Sanchez.
Present.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Here.
You have a quorum, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Town Clerk. Mr. Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I would like to make the motion that we place the following items on the consent calendar. Item number 1, Mayor Bronin with communication with the company resolution authorizing the city to accept $58,000 from the Bushnell Park Foundation for restoration of the Israel Putnam statue in Bushnell Park. Item number 2, Mayor Bronin with a company resolution authorizing the city to accept $203,822 in Ryan White COVID-19 grant funds to provide COVID-19 related core medical and support services to people living with AIDS, HIV. Item number 9, an ordinance making general fund appropriations to reflect project costs relative to public improvements in the Patances Early Reading Lab School. Item number 10, ordinance making general fund appropriations to reflect project costs relative to public improvements in the E.B. Kennelly School. Item number 11, ordinance making general fund appropriations to reflect project costs relative to public improvements in the Wish Elementary School. Item number 12, resolution replacing a Hartford Solid Waste Task Force member, Joanne Bauer, passing member with Sam King, and that the foregoing actions of the task force be adhered to.
I second the motion.
A motion has been made. I apologize. A motion has been made and properly second. Are there any discussions? Any discussions on the motions? Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Bermudez.
Yes.
Councilman Clark.
Yes.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
Councilman LeBron.
Yes.
Councilman Mictum.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
Yes.
Councilman Sanchez. Councilman Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I would like to make the motion that we receive the following items. Item number 3, Operations Management Budget and Government Accountability Committee, communication concerning an ordinance making general fund appropriations to reflect project costs relative to public improvements in the Wish Elementary School. Communication from the Operations, Management, Budget, and Government Accountability Committee concerning an ordinance making general fund appropriations to reflect project costs relative to public improvements in the E.B. Kennelly School. Communication from the Operations, Management, Budget, and Government Accountability concerning an ordinance making general fund appropriations to reflect project costs relative to public improvements in the Patances Early Reading Lab School. Item number 6, communication from the Operations, Management, Budget, and Government Accountability Committee concerning the recommended general fund and capital improvement program ordinance of appropriations for general fund, ordinance concerning appropriations in the capital improvement fund, and ordinance tax levy on list of October 1st, 2019.
I second the motion.
We have a motion that's been made and properly second. Are there any discussions? Any discussions? Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Madam President, a clarification. I didn't hear Majority Leader mention which numbers. You said 3 and 6. I didn't hear the other numbers.
The other numbers for clarification are altogether 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman Bermudez,
Yes.
Councilman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilman LeBron,
Yes.
Councilman Mictum,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
Yes.
Councilman Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I would like to make the motion that we refer the following items to the said committees. Item number 13 to the Planning, Economic Development, and Housing Committee, which is a resolution of the Court of Common Council calling on the governor and legislature of the state of Connecticut to enact by executive order and/or legislation provision to protect the ability of all Hartford residents to remain in their homes. Item number 14 to the Labor, Education, Workforce, and Youth Development Committee, which is a resolution by the Court of Common Council urging Hartford Board of Education to reconsider the current move from 110 Washington Street to 85 Edward Street to a more suitable location or to remain where it is currently located.
I second the motion.
Motion has been made and properly second. Are there any discussions? Councilman Mixtum?
Thank you, Madam President. Just as to number 13, which is mine and Councilwoman Bermudez's resolution, obviously there's nothing wrong with referring it to committee. I respect that many of my colleagues, from what I understand, have some reservations about Art stepping in and saying anything on the matter of how the state addresses the pandemic-related housing problems without hearing what our colleagues in the legislature, especially on the Black and Puerto Rican caucus, are doing, and also what the Governor's Council on this matter is doing. And I respect that, and obviously the committee will address it. But I just wanted to urge us to think about the fact that as the body that represents Hartford, we are closest to the issue of people who are housing insecure and closest to the impact that the pandemic is having on those people in the sense of how the economics are playing out. That's our constituents, it's our neighbors. And so this is a matter where I think it's important for us to lead rather than follow. Obviously, what we say here is we're not making law, right? We're just asking someone else to make law. But I think our opinion can push those other bodies in the right direction in terms of protecting the most vulnerable and, in fact, all our residents from possibly losing their housing to eviction or to foreclosure. So I just wanted to weigh in and say that I think this would have been a good one for us to just go straight ahead, but I look forward to seeing it through the committee and hopefully getting a positive result. Thank you.
Councilman Clark?
Thank you, Madam President. I have spoken with our work and family colleagues over the weekend. as well as members of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus and Housing Committee on this proposed resolution. And I'm willing to work with the members of our body, as well as at the General Assembly, to insert some information that at the state level so that we can pass this resolution to urge the governor to enact an executive order to help out our residents.
Thank you, Councilman Clark. Anyone else? Councilwoman Surgeon?
Thank you, Madam President. During the COVID pandemic, the mayor and the council organized committees of several different constituents throughout the city, several organizations. There were committees for business to return. There's crisis committees. There's housing committees. And those committees are coming to an end and will be submitting to the mayor some short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals in opening up our city and to also how we're going to help our residents in the city. So I do support the resolution by Councilman Mitchell and Councilman Bermudez, but I would also like to wait on finding out what these subcommittee reports back to us on and include some of that information to strengthen this resolution. So then instead of the council talking, these are residents of the city speaking. These are organizations who are working with our residents in the city, propose these changes and information that we're going to need when we reopen our city for short-term, medium, and long-term goals. So that's why I would like to, in the committee meeting of the PD&H, we will get all this information and make this resolution much stronger when we pass it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Surgeon. Councilwoman Bermudez?
Thank you, through you, Council President. I just wanted to mention that this resolution, as it's written right now, does have the support of various representatives at the state level, among them Representative Brandon McGee. So I just wanted to let folks know that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bermudez. Councilwoman Rossetti?
President, I think it goes without saying, I did not speak to Councilman Mixon or Bermudez, but I think it goes without saying that we certainly know who we represent, and we certainly want to lead in that way, and we certainly know the concerns of the residents of our city. That's why we're here. But I think with the discussions that we had and how we go forward, so please don't ever take it that we're not as concerned as some others. I think we're all equally concerned, and I truly believe we're all in this together. So I think looking at particularly sitting on the committee I'm sitting on, I can see the work that's going into it twice a week. And I do think the process that we're going through will end up, having working for everyone. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rossetti. I do want to piggyback on Councilwoman Surgeon and Rossetti's comment. You know, we are all in this together. Definitely have at heart the concerns of the residents and the landlords. And I also want to see what the task force report comes back so that this resolution is stronger. Does anyone have any other comments? Any other council members? Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Bermudez,
Yes.
Councilman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilman LeBron,
Yes.
Councilman Mictum,
Yes.
Lotto,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
Yes.
Councilman Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make the motion that we place the following item on action. Item number 7, which is a report from Operations Management Budget and Government Accountability. Also a report from the Planning, Economic Development and Housing Committee with an accompanying resolution that would authorize the approval of a 50-year land lease of City of Hartford property to 7 Summits Realty. LLC for 1135, 1117H, and 1161 Albany Avenue, and 425 and 426 Woodland Street.
Second amendment?
Thank you. A motion has been made and properly second. Are there any discussions? Any discussions? Councilman Gale, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So when this matter came before the Planning and Economic Development and Housing Committee, the administration did not have the term sheet at that time. And so council members, when reviewing this proposal, were not able to see the full extent of the negotiations between the developer, Seven Summits, and the city of Hartford. The time passed out of committee to coming to council tonight, we have received that term sheet. We did receive it a couple of days ago, if I'm not mistaken. I had the opportunity to review the term sheet, and one of the first things that struck me was the fact that the community benefits agreement was lacking. There was no element in the community benefits agreement that addressed the requirement that we have been in putting into all of our development agreements, that during the construction phase, a certain percentage of the employees be Hartford residents. My understanding is that that was taken back to Development Services this afternoon, and they've agreed to change that. I don't know if we have the amended term sheet in front of us. My understanding is that the term sheet's been amended to say that 30% of the workforce during construction have to be Hartford residents, and certainly that's good news. I'm a little disconcerted, however, that it's happened, 2 hours before our council meeting. But there's a second aspect of this that I am opposed to at this point, without further discussion. That's not to say I wouldn't agree to it ultimately, but as we sit here tonight, I'm not going to agree to it. And that is what the pilot payment is. This project, like other projects before it, is not going to be a tax-paying project. We are not really selling the land. We are giving the developer, in this case, a 50-year ground lease. And so the developer is not going to own the property. We're going to still own it, but the developer is going to pay us some amounts of money every year called pilot, payment in lieu of taxes. And that amount that the developer is going to pay us has been set forth in the term sheet as 5% of gross revenues after 3-year period of no payment. So the developer is getting a 3-year period to construct the project, and then the developer will start paying us 5% per year for the next 47 years. Now, I compared that project to two things. I compared it, first of all, to the office building in which I work, which is 363 Main Street. That's a 16,000 square foot office building, very old building, but it's been somewhat renovated, certainly. In that particular building, that building pays 20% of its gross revenues in taxes. And I suggest that that's probably pretty typical of average buildings in the city of Hartford. Many of our typical taxpayers, multifamily residential and commercial, are paying 20% of their revenues in taxes. I then also compared this project to Park and Main, which has actually a common developer. Mr. Freeman, Rowan Freeman, is one of the partners at Park and Main. He's one of the principals at Albany and Woodland. At Park and Main, the pilot agreement calls for 2 years of no payment. Then it calls for 3 years of payment at 5% of gross revenues. And then it talks about the next 25 years will be at 7%. So it goes a step up, 5% of gross revenues for 3 years, and then 7% for the next 25. And then at the end of 30 years, the deal's gone. So we would renegotiate at that point and see what's going on. In this particular agreement, as I mentioned, it's 5% for 47 years. I'm opposed to that at this point in time. I might not be opposed to it ultimately, but without being able to talk more about it, I'm going to oppose it tonight. And tonight I'm going to suggest that the deal should be that it goes up to 7% after 6 years, and that it goes up to 10% after 30 years, so that it's a little bit more representative of the reality that our other taxpayers here in the city are paying. I recognize that we have a very hard time in the city of Hartford of getting any kind of development, and I recognize that as a result, we must therefore subsidize all development. But I don't quite understand the difference between this project and a very similar project, Park and Main, that we just approved. And in fact, given the opportunity to compare the two, this project is getting the benefit of, we are, as the city of Hartford, we are committing to a 20 or 25-year lease for 16,000 square foot at this project, where we're going to be giving this developer $250,000 a year. So he's got a guaranteed tenant that's a pretty darn good tenant, the city of Hartford, for a pretty long time. Also understand guaranteed tenancy from St. Francis Hospital, which is going to put an urgent care center there. And I don't know if this is guaranteed, but I think the developer said there was a pretty high likelihood they were going to get a bank, some branch of a bank. None of that, mind you, exists over at Park and Main, and yet Park and Main, they've agreed to pay higher pilot, more revenue for the city. Anyway, so those are my my comments and my reason for opposing moving forward on this tonight.
Are there any other discussions? Thank you, Councilman Gale, for your comments. Councilwoman Bermudez.
Through you, Council President. Is that a motion that was made?
I did
Yes,
not,
it was a,
but if you would second it, I will make an amendment.
Second.
Madam President, just for clarification, can there be, and for the record, just to be clear, what was the actual motion made? Because we already had a motion on the floor.
Yes.
They'll be happy to clarify it, Mr. Majority Leader. I make a motion that we amend the approval of this project to change the pilot such that the pilot for this project is 3 years with no payments, and then it is 5% of actual gross revenues for years 4, 5, 6, and 7. So for the next 4 years, it's 5% of actual gross revenues, and then it goes up in the 8th year to 7% of gross revenues, and that would be for the next 23 years. At the end of that time, it would then go up to 10% of gross revenues for the remaining 20 years of the 50-year ground lease.
Okay, so for clarification purposes, Howard, motion has been made and properly second. Are there any other discussions on the motion that Councilman Gale has just made? So for clarification purposes, we are now going to vote on the motion that Councilman Gale has just made and Councilwoman Bermudez has seconded. Any other comments?
Yes, I have. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Councilman LeBron.
Yes, the question that I have is that being that this is kind of a last minute thing, and more importantly, the development in the North End being so critical at this time, my question would be to the folks that are in the know or have the relations with the developer, is that we can make the motion now, but the developer has the opportunity to back out. Is that correct?
Councilwoman Surgeon? Councilman Clark?
Yeah, there is always an opportunity for the developer to back out, given the fact that this project has been delayed due to the pandemic, and any further delay of this project will resort in the groundbreaking and everything else associated with getting all the rest of the ducks in order. It will put this in critical jeopardy of this project not taking place. Now, let's keep in mind how long this property, which has been an eyesore in this respective community since maybe 2009. So we're looking at well over a decade of nothing taking place. And so we are on the precipice of getting a major development done in this particular area of the city of Hartford, which let's not forget that this is also the promise zone, and where there is now critical development that has been going on with respect to the Albany Avenue streetscape. So this actually is a critical piece to the streetscape that is almost near completion. So just want to put that in some perspective and in context as people are contemplating whether to delay this vote for at least another 2 weeks, because if we were to vote on this now, and not knowing where the minds of the developers will be, we actually, to Councilman LeBron's point, could make this now a non-starter.
Any other discussion? So for clarification purposes, the motion that's on the floor from Councilman Gale, second by Councilwoman Bermudez, is a motion to send this item back to committee. Is that correct? Is that correct?
No, Council President, the motion is to amend the proposal to change the pilot aspect of the term sheet.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. So we're voting, for clarification purposes, we're voting on.
Madam President,
Yes, go ahead, Howard.
Howard Rifkin, Corporation Counsel. So if this amendment is approved, my view is it's substantive enough that the item would be sent back to committee for consideration.
Correct. Thank you, Howard, for that clarification. Councilman Sanchez?
Yes, I have a question for Howard Rifkin. If we approve and pass the first motion, not the amendment, is there an opportunity to amend the negotiation after the fact? To Councilman Gale's point.
Through you, Madam President, if you pass the original resolution, then the negotiations with the developer would take place within that context rather than the context that Councilman Gale is proposing.
So my next question is that apparently we're still waiting for the language for the community benefit that's supposed to have been amended as well. Am I correct?
Councilwoman Surgeon?
To you, Madam President, the 15% was amended in the term sheet that was sent to us this afternoon. Also, to you, Madam President, to Councilman Sanchez, this project we've been holding up for, not we haven't, because of the our situation that we've been in. This project came to our committee back in March of this year. Unfortunately, we've gone down to one council meeting. We didn't have any committee meeting in several months. We had a committee meeting, a joint committee meeting a week ago regarding this information. Unfortunately, yes, Councilman Gale did point out that we did get the term sheet for the project late. But I have faith in the administration by saying that the administration put the best thing they could together for a project in a community for over several decades where there's been no development in the neighborhood, and that's the best development that is subsidized that could have been made to get this project moving. And that's one of the things that would like my council person to take consideration, that there's been lots of projects in the city over the last 7 to 10 years They've all been subsidized by the city and our tax dollars. Please understand that in the north of Farmington Avenue in the city of Hartford, there have not been in the last 20 or 30 years none new major construction in this neighborhood. Also consider that since this pandemic we've been living in, there is a need for housing, especially housing that is subsidized in this neighborhood. People are looking for places to live currently. There are very limited subsidized housing we have in our neighborhood. So this is really important that this project gets going. We need to have this resolution passed so the developer can continue with his or her financing. So this project we can look forward to some groundbreaking in the next year or so. But when we talked about the crisis that we're in and the need for housing in the city, this is what is going to be needed in the very near future. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Surgeon. Councilman Gale?
Yes, thank you, Council President. That the two things. The lot at the corner of Woodland and Old has been vacant for a very, very, very long time. I think somebody mentioned 10 years. I think it's longer than that, quite frankly. I think it's probably bordering on 20 years. The developer, Rowan Freeman, is a Hartford guy. He's got a major project going on at Park and Main. His office is located on John Street. I don't believe that Mr. Freeman would abandon this project at all. And I don't believe that a 2-week delay in this project is significant for something that's been around for as long as it has, and for something that's been put together as well as it has. We might very well come back here in 2 weeks and find that it's exactly the same thing. And so when I mention the 2 weeks, that's by way of mentioning that if colleagues would like to simply postpone this, which to Corp Counsel's point would then not send it back to committee, it would just simply postpone it. That would give us all 2 weeks to get some answers. We're back here on June 8th. And I think we would be doing ourselves and the citizens of Hartford a favor by looking at the proposal a little bit more deeply, giving it just a little bit more close scrutiny. Perhaps it comes back with a slightly better deal. Maybe it doesn't come back with a better deal. But I think it's absolutely worth taking the time. I don't believe this project's going.
Call the question.
Thank you, Councilman Gale. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Bermudez,
Yes.
Councilman Clark,
No.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilman LeBron,
No.
Councilman Mictum, Councilman
Yes.
Mictum,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado,
No.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
No.
Councilman Sanchez,
No.
Councilwoman Surgeon. Councilman
No.
Surgeon. Motion failed.
Councilman Gale? You're on mute. Councilman Gale, you're on mute.
Make a motion to postpone this action until our next council meeting, June 8th.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly second. Councilman
Question.
Sanchez.
Call the question.
Okay.
Question has been called. Mr. Clerk. Howard, for clarification purposes, we now have a motion from Councilman Gale and second by Councilman Mixtum to postpone this item. It's been made and properly second. Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Bermudez,
Yes.
Councilman Clark,
No.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilman LeBron,
No.
Councilman Mictum,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado,
No.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
No.
Councilman Sanchez,
No.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
No.
Motion failed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Now we're back to our original motion. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Bermudez,
Yes.
Councilman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
No.
Councilman LeBron,
Yes.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
Yes.
Councilman Sanchez,
Yeah.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I'd like to make the motion that we place the following item on to be postponed, my apologies, which is item number 8, an ordinance amending Chapter 2, appointments of requirements, Section 850, residency requirements of the municipal code.
Second the motion.
We have a motion that's been made and properly second. Are there any discussions? Any discussion? Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Bermudez,
Yes.
Councilman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilman LeBron,
Yes.
Councilman Mictum,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
Yes.
Councilman Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. This now concludes our regular scheduled agenda for this evening. We will not recess.
An alert from System UI server.
I apologize for that. This now concludes our regular scheduled agenda for this evening. We will now recess tonight's meeting instead of adjourning for the purposes of continuing our deliberation on the 2021 fiscal year city budget. We will reconvene next Thursday, June 4th, 12 p.m. Everyone, thank you for participating tonight. I want to thank our council members. With that said, and no further business to conduct, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.